Yeah, same link, the one I sent. No? Eh? It's showing up like it's coming through, so we'll have to just carry on there. Is it? Okay, finally, we're gonna move on. Sorry about this. Okay, so we're talking about this hadith that it talks about the halal and the haram. And we've got a module on halal and haram. And I keep mentioning that we've got a module for this, we've got a module for that. So eventually, inshallah, Allah give us the fee to get around to it and go through it, the halal and haram, which will be useful. Let's go over this first. So it talks about, so one way of putting this here, and this is where a lot of people use it, well, in the wrong way. They use it to say that that which is, when it comes down to many, the so-called Salafis, where they say that this is haram, this is haram, this is haram. The default position is that it's halal. Anything that's haram, it's been mentioned mainly through the Quran. That's definite. Then let me just quickly go back on one here. So you need to understand the definitions. Remember earlier on, right at the start, the first lesson, I turned around and said these are the legal definitions. You had fard, wajib, and then on the other side we had haram, and then we had makruh, tahriman, makruh tanzihan, prohibitively disliked, slightly disliked. If it's come in the Quran and it's definite, there's no doubt about it, the scholars will put it down as haram. If there's some kind of doubt, so non-decisive, put it down as prohibitively disliked. The rulings are the same. It's still almost like haram, but saying something haram, you're putting a lot of emphasis, you're putting a lot of responsibility on yourself. So that's why the scholars, they'd be reluctant to use the word haram. Okay, but the ruling's the same on them. So that's not, don't worry about that. That's what you need to understand. In the case here as well, what we're talking about here is that haram has been made it clear for us, this is haram. It's like, let's talk about in this country. If we were in this country, or let's just say in Saudi Arabia or Dubai, we turn around and say that, would you say, ask the question, how many mosques are there in this country? You want to know between a mosque and church. Would you say that how many mosques are there in this country, or how many of these worship places are not mosques? Okay, it'd be easier to say the other way. So you wouldn't turn around and list, this is halal, this is halal, this is halal, this is halal. The smaller element is the haram element. So you turn around and list that haram, 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 haram. If it doesn't fall into here, it's halal. So the default position for us is that it's halal. If it's haram, then it'll be clearly stated. So when someone says to you that this is haram, they should be the ones providing you the evidence. You don't provide the evidence if you turn around and call something halal. It's halal. Okay? If someone turns around and says, prove to me it's halal. No, it's not like that. like I said, because then it's like, you have to list one after the other. There's so many there. If it's haram, yes, provide the evidence on haram. But nowadays, people do the opposite. They just call everything haram. Okay, this is haram, this is haram. If that's the case, they're the ones, it's ownership on them to provide the evidence. Okay, someone says to you, this is haram. Okay, please tell me, why is it haram? Then they'll say, okay, because of this, this, and this. Yeah, that's what it should be. That's the way it should work. The only one that you switch it around is when it comes to animals. So when it comes to eating, by default, it's haram until something's happened to it, i.e. sacrificing the right way, then it becomes halal. So the default position there is haram. But when it comes to anything else and rulings and all that, it's all halal, okay, until it's proven on there. I wanted to go into a bit more detail in this, but we're running behind time, so I'm going to just cut this short. And the important part here is there's few things here. There's things that are doubtful. Be careful on those that are doubtful. If it's doubtful, it doesn't mean, okay, let's go and try it out anyway, because then that's it, it's all over. It's like, I think the teacher gave an example is that if something's doubtful, you don't say, like, let me try it out first. Well, that's it, and the ship sailed already. What's the point? It's like a knife. I'm gonna grab a knife and I'm gonna poke it into your heart. There's a doubt. Will you die or will you not die? There's a bit of doubt there. Okay, let's try it out. You don't do that, do you? If there's doubt, you leave it to a side. Just don't try it out. Okay, unless you've been given solid evidence from scholars, etc., to say, look, it's fine. Then that's fine. You continue with it. If it's doubtful, best thing is you leave it. Okay, and move on from that. And the final thing is, and actually, we're gonna cover there I'll go again. There's a module on the heart, purification of the heart, which is really good. So the last part is something that you can dwell on so much, and people, it's a famous one. You probably heard it. And you know what? I just realized I haven't got it on the board. Hold up. The last part there, it says that truly in the body there is an organ. Prophet ﷺ, truly in the body there is an organ which, if it is wholesome, the entire body is wholesome. But if it's corrupted, the entire body is diseased. Take heed, it's the heart. Okay, and you can't even see it. Take heed, it's the heart. And that's it. That's what comes about from, all this, there's a hadith, I think the following hadith, the next one, or it's one of the hadiths that talks about the food. You are what you eat, kind of thing. Same thing with the heart. Is your heart. If your heart's clean, right, everything else will flow through. If your heart's corrupted, then that's it, and it's gone. So it's all about, Allah Ta'ala doesn't see your physical forms. He doesn't care about your physical form. You can look as beautiful as possible. You can do this and that wherever possible. Allah Ta'ala looks at your inner side, in how you are internally. That's what's really important. Okay, so work on your heart. It's like, I was gonna mention this. So it's like the body needs exercise. I was looking around and I said, okay, for example, me, I go to the gym. I can't say for everyone, but I go to the gym, right? And exercise for the body to be healthy. Same thing for the heart. The exercise for the heart is dhikr. The more dhikr you do, the more your heart is purified. Every time you do something bad, you swear, something like that, black dot is put on your heart. And our hearts, including me first of all, more than anyone else, it's all black. Okay? The more dhikr we do, the good deeds you do, that's when a golden dot is put on there. And then there's all light, and that's where you want to get to. And there's a book Imam Nawawi talks about, Kitab al-Adhkar. It talks about 9 principles to purify the heart. I'm just going to list those for you, and then we'll move on, inshallah. Read the Quran. Read the Quran and try to contemplate on what you're reading. Okay? If you can't read, make an effort to try to learn. It's never too late. A teacher once gave an example. A lady, she started reading at the age of 5. And she read for about, I don't know, whatever it was, few years. And then what happened? Life happened. She got married, kids, whatever, got busy with life. But near old age, she decided, look, no, this is hifz actually. she wanted to learn the Quran again. So she started again. And literally about, I think it was 6 months before she passed away, she finished it all. So imagine that whole lifespan. That's when she started and when she finished. It's never too late. Those that can't read at all, a lady was given wilayah just by, she used to pick up the Quran and just run her fingers over it. And internally she'd say, Allah Ta'ala, I can't read, but these are your words, and they're beloved to me. And if I could read, I would read them. But all she used to do, just run her fingers over the words. And she received it just on the back of that. So it's not just the fact that, look, you know, you've got a beautiful voice and you read so beautifully. You got to make an effort. Yes, if you don't know how to read the Quran, then make an effort. It's never too late. Don't feel ashamed. Oh, I can't. I'm going to start on the patti again, and you know, alif ba. Don't worry. These are the words of Allah. Don't worry about it. And if you've got people, family members at home, encourage them and try to teach them. It's important. So yeah, read the Quran, contemplate on it, eat less. It's an important one, especially in the Western world. We tend to do a lot of that. Not eat less, sorry, the opposite. Qiyam al-Layl, pray at night. Contemplation during Fajr time. Fajr time is the, you know, like they say, for the righteous, the time just before Fajr up to sunrise. Those are the business hours for them. You know, that's the business hours for them. So Fajr time is a very blessed time. If you want to memorize anything, Fajr time is the time to memorize it. Okay. Companionship of the righteous. Stay silent from what doesn't concern you. And that's something very difficult for us. We want to know what's happening throughout the world. And why didn't they come to me? I need the answer. You know, if it doesn't concern you, it doesn't concern you. Okay. Sheikh Mohammed Al-Yaqubi once mentioned that they're walking home with their father, and someone was fighting. And as soon as they turned around, their father turned the head back and said, "Carry on walking." And he asked him why. Because, well, are you going to do anything about it? No, there's a little kid here. Then it doesn't concern you. And when someone's going to ask about it, you need to answer because you were their witness and all that. So if it doesn't concern you, just move on. Stay away from people of ignorance. Yeah, okay. I want to comment on that one. Mixing with people too much isolation. So yeah, don't mingle too much. I mean, it's good family time, etc. But spend time with yourself. Contemplate the entire day. How did it go? What good did you do? What bad did you do? How are you going to solve yourself? So, and at end of the day, at night before going to sleep, just sit down, spend about 5-10 minutes with yourself, and just think about it. You're doing dhikr. Just think about how did the day go, and how do you want to improve it. Okay. And finally, sustenance. Your sustenance is halal. That's it. That's very important as well. You are what you eat, and is your sustenance halal? That's going to have an impact on you. There was a lot more things I wanted to cover on that, but we're going to keep it short because of our mishaps with the technology. I mean, inshallah, we'll move on to the prayer. Where do you get to? Yeah, okay, here. Sure. Who agrees with him? We didn't get to this, but I want to go back onto this. The adhan, I wanted to cover it because I remember that I didn't talk about it. Our teachers mention it in a nice way. Some of the sheikhs mention it in a nice way, the adhan, and give a different explanation on the adhan. And I wanted to touch upon that. So adhan, fundamentally, it's a reminder of the Day of Judgment. And there's two ways you can kind of look at it. I know we've covered the fiqh element, but this is just more of like an inner dimension. And inshallah, what I want to do is once I finish the prayer module at the end, I want to talk about the inner dimensions of prayer as well, which will be really useful, especially the way Imam Ghazali mentions about the inner dimensions. It's amazing. It'll help you concentrate more. So if it's another way of thinking of the adhan here. So remember what I mentioned here, that the adhan, some of the uses of the adhan is giving it at childbirth as well. Okay, so giving the adhan to a child. At that point, you're giving the adhan, but there's no prayer. Okay, what prayer is it that you don't give an adhan? Janazah. So they say that the adhan you're giving to a child at birth is actually the adhan for the janazah. So between the adhan of the you're giving to the child and your prayer, that's your preparation. You know, as like when the adhan is given, it's saying out like, are you prepared for the prayer? So you prepare yourself for prayer. So this is the thing, isn't it? You've given the adhan at a childbirth. Now prepare yourself. It's reminding you of death. And in between, your life is what you're preparing for death. That's your preparation. So it's the first thing you're getting reminded on, basically. So your whole life is just kind of a preparation for having a good death. So there's a few, there's two different aspects I want to talk about on the adhan. The first one is, let's just break it down in the wording. So you got the 4 takbeers of the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Okay, the 4 takbeers is the same as the 4 takbeers of the janazah. So those of you that know the janazah prayer, there's 4 takbeers in the janazah prayer. So that's your there. That's what that is. And then it's moving. So this aspect is talking about in the grave. You do know when you die in the grave, you'll be asked the questions. They don't know what the questions are. You get asked when you die. Yes? No? I'm sure you all know. You're just shy to say it, isn't it? Come on, let it out. So we got one of them. Who's your Lord? Yeah. Who's your Lord? So what do you say? What is the when they ask the question, who's your Lord? The answer to that is the adhan. Which one? After takbir, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. There is no God but. You know, you're testifying. You're testifying to Allah. That's it. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Okay, that's your answer to that question. And then he's asked about you're showing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what's the answer to that? And you say, what did you think of this person? That's the next part. Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Yeah. Okay. And then it's the hayya ala salah. Hayya ala salah is about come to prayer. And you're asked, what was your religion? Now, salah is your fundamental of your religion. The hadith of the Prophet saying that the difference between iman and kufr is prayer. And we talk about the prayer as being the pillar of Islam, the fundamental, one of the strongest pillars of Islam. That's what distinguishes us from everyone else. Okay, so that's where your hayya ala salah, come to salah. That's your answer to that. What was your religion? Your religion is linked to your salah, you know, Islam. Hayya al falah is your salvation. So inshallah, when you've answered the questions successfully, what happens? The window of paradise is opened, and your grave becomes wide, and it's like the paradise, a garden of paradise, and that's your salvation. Hayya al falah is your, hasten towards salvation. That's your salvation. And then it's Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So when you've kind of succeeded, that's when Allah is the greatest. Allah is the greatest. And then truly, once you succeeded and you realize that your grave has become a part of the garden of paradise, that's when you truly utter with certainty, La ilaha illallah. Sure, there is no God but Allah. That's one aspect of looking at it. Another one is symbolizing. So that's in the grave. The other way of looking at it is actually the hereafter. So again, you've got the 4 takbeers, and those 4 takbeers signify the 4 stages of a person and the hereafter. So the first stage is you're dying. Your second stage is the awakening in the grave. Yes, the questions. The third stage is resurrection from the grave, and the fourth stage is when you're brought to the plains of the Qiyamah. Okay, and me repeating myself again. There is a module on and the afterlife and the stages and all that. But I can't teach them all at once. You guys need to come more and more, and basically when you complete this, and then we move on. Okay, so there's your 4 stages that we talk about. That's your 4 takbeers. Okay, then you got the shahada, which is the hisab and coming of Allah Ta'ala. The ashhadu an la ilaha illallah is coming of Allah Ta'ala on the Qiyamah. Okay, and then you've got the risala, so the 2 risalas of ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. That's when we talk about the intercession of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, one at the beginning to kick off. So the 2 ashhadu an la ilaha, the 2 risalas represented. The first one is for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam intercession to kick off Qiyamah, requesting Allah Ta'ala when he goes into sajda and he asks Allah Ta'ala to kick off Qiyamah. And the second one is when the Prophet ﷺ comes and removes those sinners from the hellfire. And that's what this part represents. And the next is Hayya ala Salah, questioning. Hayya ala Salah, the first, the 2 Hayya ala Salah, the one is questioning at first questioning. The first questioning is about prayer. Okay, and the second is you standing before Allah Ta'ala in prayer on the day of Qiyamah. That's what the 2 Hayya ala Salah represent. And Hayya ala Falah, it's the 2 Hayya ala Falah represent. One is the crossing of the bridge, successful crossing on the Pul Sirat, and the second is drinking from the hold of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, that's your salvation. Crossing of the Pul Sirat and drinking from the hold of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and then finally the 2 takbeers, entering paradise, and the second one is about you then raising based on your station. Remember, there's different stations in paradise, and based on what level you're at, that's the station you'll be raised towards. And then finally, La ilaha illallah is the divine vision. Remember I mentioned a few lessons ago that the ultimate success for us, the ultimate gift for us in paradise will be the vision of Allah. And so La ilaha illallah represents the vision of Allah. So that's just another way of thinking of the adhan. And they bring it about, and I thought it's quite nice. So I thought I wanted to just share that with you. Okay. So now it's back to my question at the start. Where did we get to? Okay, we covered all these preconditions. Remember that? Everyone remember the preconditions? We covered all the preconditions. Then, inshallah, we're going to move on to the integrals. Okay, so remember I mentioned the takbir tahrima, and I think I'm not sure if I mentioned last week or I mentioned previously. You know what the meaning of takbir tahrima is? Don't all answer at once. I covered it. I definitely covered it when we covered this module. This is a recap. Don't forget. So you guys should already know the answers. Okay, you know what the takbir is. I'm trying to understand what tahrima is. Look at it. What does it look like? When you look at something, you look at the roots. Who said that? Yes, it is. It's haram. So basically, it's what makes things haram. So you say Allah Akbar tahrima is what makes it haram. Now you've got certain conditions that we put upon you. So certain conditions that make like what you could have done outside of prayer. Within prayer, they're made haram now. Talking, eating, stuff like that. You could do it. It's all valid outside of prayer, but inside of prayer, it becomes haram. Okay. And we mentioned that scholars differ whether this is actually a precondition or it actually is an integral and part of the prayer itself. So we could say that, again, as I said with the preconditions, the integrals, there's 6 of them. And the 6th one is, again, the brackets around it because some scholars say it is an integral, some say it's not. So there's qiyam, qiraat, ruku, sajda, qaida, and exiting the prayer. Okay, first of all, let's quickly talk about what actual integrals are. Integrals are what make, integrals are the bare bone of the prayer. Remember the definition I gave right at the start here? You've got preconditions and integrals. There's your definition there. The top half of that is all the same. Without it, your prayer is invalid. The bottom half is what changes it, because integrals are actually part of the prayer, whereas preconditions are not part of the prayer. Okay, that's the difference there. So just integrals alone are just the bare bones. Okay, it makes your prayer valid, but it's not sound. The wajibat make your prayer sound, but not optimal. and the sunnahs make your prayer optimal, and that's what you should be aiming towards, the sunnahs. The sunnahs, because with doing everything, that's the best way of praying, and that's what you want to be achieving. And the purpose of studying them is just so you understand that what is decisively understood from the Quran, and it helps focus and prioritize that this one, be careful with this. This is an integral, or this is a wajib. Be careful when you're praying this part. Don't make a silly mistake. Yeah, and then it also helps to rectify any past mistakes. So when you go to someone and say, "Oh, I've been praying like this, and I've been making this mistake throughout," and if it was just a sunnah, the scholar would say to you, "Don't worry about it. You're fine. It's valid. Your prayer is valid." Okay. So just integrals alone, you can't just perform an integral and say, "That's it, I'll perform a prayer." Yeah, you can't just perform an integral. Okay, well, we're going to quickly cover that anyway. So the first one is qiyam, which is standing. It's a conditional integral, so qiyam, or that which validly substitutes for it. Meaning, if you've got a valid excuse and you can't stand, then the qiyam, the standing, drops and you can sit down. Okay. Minimum duration is 3 subhanallah. So these are the integrals I'm only talking about here, don't forget. Meaning this is the fard element of it, which is minimum 3 subhanallahs. Integral in obligatory prayers unless prevented by excessive hardship. So for all obligatory prayers, you must stand. And again, just I mentioned just in case, unless there's hardship. And it's recommended in optional prayers. So all non-obligatory prayers, you can pray sitting down. All non-obligatory prayers, you can pray sitting down. And sitting is a valid substitute, not even mildly, it's not even mildly disliked. The person says, but obviously your reward is halved. So you can't turn around and say someone's sitting down and they're praying their sunnahs, it's sinful, it's disliked. No, it's not even mildly disliked. It just means that the reward is less. That's all it is. I'm coming out with something controversial here. And don't go telling anyone at home. You could pray non-obligatory prayers in a car. I must have told you that before. So you're driving, wherever you're driving, and you can pray. And as long as it's not fard prayer, you can pray in your car. And we'll go through it. You won't understand it now because I'm going to cover all the integrals, the wajibat, and the sunnahs, and then we'll cover it back and tell you how you can pray, because then you'll know which part is sunnah and which is fine. You know, even if Qibla is that way, then you're traveling that way, you can still pray. Like I said, it's controversial, don't worry about it. And we've got that from the Prophet ﷺ praying on, what would you, obviously, he would have been praying on a camel. Should we take that from? Go on then.
Not first place.
Not first.
Then why did you make a rush to read in? Why would you want to read then in the car?
There's two things here. One is that you can use it as, say, you need to go get somewhere and you only paid your fard, then you have to pay your sunnah. You still haven't paid your sunnah, so you can use it then. Second one is, instead of listening to some Bollywood songs, right, on your way to London, why don't you just pay nafil in traffic? The driver. See, I thought it was going to be controversial, isn't it? Well, remind me later. Remind me later, and I'll tell you how it is. We'll talk about it later. Okay, next one, the qiraat recitation, and this is important here because people make a mistake on this. Qiraat literally means to separate the sound from the mouth. Okay, minimally to hear one's voice in ideal conditions. There's even a position that, provided you are almost articulating that you are speaking, even if a sound doesn't come out, that's a position. But the preferred position is that you hear your own voice. Yeah, that's in ideal conditions. So if it's noisy and you don't hear yourself, you know why this position has been come about in ideal conditions. And the second one is that even if you don't hear yourself, because then that's when waswasa starts. And the person's going to start thinking to myself, oh, wait a minute, I didn't hear myself say this. I didn't hear myself say that. And it's to eliminate the waswasa. But yes, in ideal condition, you should be hearing yourself. And like I said, there's the sound position. Another one is articulating soundless movement of the mouth. That's another position. So reading in the mind or in the heart, it's not valid. That's important. Reading in the mind and the heart is not valid. The basic principle, all verbalization in prayer must be recited. And this is for individual prayer. Remember, if you're praying behind an imam, as Hanafis, praying behind an imam is prohibitively disliked to recite behind an imam. So if it doesn't matter what prayer it is, whether the imam is reading aloud or quietly, let's just take a quiet prayer. That's a prayer. You just you start off Subhanakallah, and that's it. You can read without A'udhu Billah as well, but then that's it, and then you stay quiet. Okay. If say a loud prayer like Maghrib or Isha, and you know the takbir is read, and you start reading Subhanakallah, and the imam starts his recitation, you stop straight away. Even if you haven't completed Subhanakallah, you stop straight away and you listen to the imam. You shouldn't be, oh, let me just quickly finish. Even if you're right at the end, you got one word left, you just stop. Okay? This is important. So you don't recite behind the imam anything that's from the Quran, which is the Fatiha and a surah. Okay? Any questions on that? I mean, for women, obviously, it's important. For the men should already know this. Boys should already know this because it's so common. But for women, because you don't do it as much, and you just got to be aware that when you do it, this is it. You don't be reciting behind an imam. So the integral element is any 2 rakats of the fard prayer and all rakats of the nafil and witr prayer. You must recite. That's the integrals, okay? Number 3 is ruku, bowing. And I'm not going to go through that, but you can read if you want to. It's just the definition of exactly how you're bowing minimally, etc. So yeah, it's just you can read it off the board here. This is a recap session, so you should know this. Sajda, prostration, definition again, to place. This is a integral definition. It doesn't make it valid integral definition. So definition, to place the forehead on the earth as well as other parts of the body required to achieve this. Minimally valid sajda principle to achieve the linguistic definition of sajda, practically forehead, one hand, one knee, any part of one foot. Now you're gonna look really stupid trying to do that kind of a sajda, aren't you? But that's the minimum that should be on the ground. And the duration in the instant, twice the number of rakats. That's how many you're going to do. And I'm not going to confuse you. Actually, you know what? I might as well put it in there now because I put it in there. If you perform one sajda in one rakat, you can then perform 3 sajdas in the second rakat. Okay. And then obviously you need to do a sajda saw to rectify it. Yeah, that's obvious. But if you forgot and you've just done the one sajda in the first rakat and you remember, oh, I only done the one sajda, don't break your prayer. All you do is in the second rakat, you do 3 sajdas. So you need to do double sajda based on how many rakats there. So you got 2 rakats, you need to do 4 sajdas. 4 rakats, 8 sajdas. Okay? So if you got a 2 rakat prayer and you haven't done that, so you haven't done 4 sajdas, then you've missed an integral. So that means your prayer is invalid. So you can't do a sajda saw. You can't rectify to a sajda saw. No. It's only if you've done that. That's the minimum you have to complete. So if you've done a 2 rakat prayer and you've only done 3 sajdas in it, then you've missed an integral. And if you miss an integral, you can't rectify with a sajda saw. You can only rectify a wajib. You can't rectify a fard element of it. Yeah? If you miss it, invalidate the prayer. That's important. Okay. We'll cover sajda saw. We're going to cover sajda saw for now, obviously, but sajda saw, it doesn't rectify an integral. It only rectifies a wajib. Okay, 5 and 6, ending the prayer. So qaid is the final sitting. Integral is to sit at the end of the prayer for the extent of the tashahhud. Recitation is not integral. So you have to at least sit down in the duration of the tashahhud. That's the integral. And exiting the prayer, integral according to some scholars, which is you have to exit the prayer by one's own violation. So I'll give you an example, and it's not a probably great one, but you're in your final sitting. You're in your final sitting, and you get right to the end, and you break your wudu, you break wind. What have you done? You've ended the prayer. But have you ended it based on your own accord? No. So that's invalid. You have to come back and complete that prayer. You can complete from there, but you have to come back and do it on there. Okay, any questions on the integrals? Sorry, I'm rushing through, but I think this is just like a recap on there. So quick recap on the preconditions is necessary for the validity of the prayer of an action, like digging a foundation for a wall. Integral is necessary for the reality of the action, like
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Okay, so quickly, we've got 10 minutes and we finish this off, yeah? So an integral is like stacking the bricks on top of each other. Wajibat are necessary for the soundness of the action, like the mortar holding the bricks in place. And the sunnahs are necessary for the perfection of the action. It's like decorating and beautifying the wall. Affecting the prayer, so you've got two elements. You've got wajibat and you got the sunnah marked on that. So again, wajibat is a command established by non-decisive evidence. It's obligatory to perform. Without it, the prayer is valid but unsound. And deliberate omission, so if you deliberately miss out a wajib, thinking, oh, it's on your wajib, then that's classed as you missing out an integral, which would invalidate your prayer. Okay, so don't just think, oh, it's a wajib, that's fine, I can miss it out. If you do it on purpose, it's as if you've missed an integral and it invalidates your prayer. Accidentally omitting it will necessitate a sajda saw, like I mentioned earlier. Sajda saw only for wajib, okay? And the sunnah mark, the sunnahs of it is a continuous practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but nothing has been transmitted indicating obligation. Deliberate omission is blameworthy if occasionally done. This is important part here actually. If you're missing out sunnahs occasionally for a valid reason, it's blameworthy if you do occasionally. But if you do it continuously as a habit, then it's sinful. Why? Because you're thinking that what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did was not important. Okay, so it becomes sinful, because then everything that is brought about, you're trying to say that, okay, but everything is brought about, then that's pointless as well. That's where it becomes sinful. So accidental or enforced omission is forgiven. That's no problem. You don't have to do a sajda if you accidentally miss a sunnah element of it. So here it is then, the wajibats of the prayer, the takbir tahrima. So we spoke about the integral is actually just entering the prayer with any dhikr. But the wajib element is saying Allahu Akbar. Okay? Wajib, if you don't start a prayer with saying Allahu Akbar, you've missed a wajib, which means you have to do a sajda saw. Okay? Reciting the Fatiha, again, it's another wajib. Reciting at least 3 verses of the Quran or something equivalent. So reciting Ayatul Kursi is one ayah, is one verse, but it's long enough to be classed as saying, 3 verses, that's fine. Specifying recitation in the farz, so you have to recite in the farz prayer the first 2 rakats and all 4 rakats in the non-farz prayer. Qoma is that you standing, after you've got the ruku and you stand up. Yeah, that's known as the qoma. Okay, and that's again you have to stand up. That's important. If you miss that out again, you missed out. The nose in sajda, so ensuring that the nose is touching. But I'll kind of discuss with the wajibat. The wajibat is 2 hands, forehead, nose, knees. This is it. This is how you do your toes. Obviously, that's your wajib sajda. 2 sajdas per rakat. Like I mentioned, itidal, being still. This is an important one actually. Being still, and it's something that gets missed out a lot. Yeah, we're in a race here. And normally when people miss it out is actually the qoma position, so rising from the the ruku, and after the sajda, you know, between the two sajdas, which is known as the jalsa, is sitting that point. So people just go and back down again. Yeah, even with the ruku as well, they're just like quickly and down again. Now you have to raise, you don't have to completely be upright, but you have to be motionless. And motionless means that you're still for at least one subhanallah. So subhanallah, that's being motionless. It's not much, 1 second, but you have to be motionless. Okay, and it's important to be motionless in all the integrals, definitely, which is standing, which is ruku, sajda, sitting, but also, like I mentioned, in the coma position, which is standing up after the ruku, and the jalsa position, which is between the two sajdas. Okay, it's something that gets missed out a lot, so be careful about that. The first sitting, if you're reading 4 rakat, the first sitting is wajib. Reciting the tashhad, so actually reciting the tashhad is wajib. Remember, the integral was just to stay sitting, but actually reciting tashhad is wajib. Ending the prayer with salam, okay, that's wajib. The qunut of witr, the recitation of the imam, loud recitation. So if it's maghrib, isha, fajr, the imam has to recite out aloud. If he doesn't recite out aloud, he's missed the wajib. So if he starts off and he starts reading alhamdulillah and he carries on, and halfway through he remembers, oh, I'm going to be reading loud, then he goes and starts reading loud, he's missed the wajib. He has to do a sajda saw. Okay, and remaining silent in a silent prayer. The takbeers of Eid prayer, those are the additional ones. Okay, I've kind of covered it, so we'll just quickly whiz through. So I've covered that, which is the opening and recitation of prayer. Sound coma, standing erect after ruku, wajib according to the fatwa position. Sound sajda, there you go, what I just mentioned. Remaining motionless, sitting. Actually, you know what? I don't think, did I cover this in the purification when we talked about sajda? Falling asleep. So remember, falling asleep actually invalidates your prayer when you're not sitting down. If a man falls asleep in a sajda, he doesn't break his wudu. However, if a woman falls asleep in sajda, it breaks her wudu. Okay. Okay. It's because of, you know, a man is using his muscles to keep himself up. Because a man in a sajda, a man has to stay all big, and he's keeping his like muscles, using muscle. If he falls asleep, he's going to fall flat on his face. But whereas a woman, she's all enclosed, and that's the way of doing it. You're enclosing and all that. We'll cover it in the sunnah element anyway. Okay, here, I just want to finish up on that. We won't go into the sunnah. Got 5 minutes, I might do. Legal rulings. If fard is missed, deliberately or accidentally, prayer is invalid and must be repeated. That's important. If a fard element is missed, whether it's done deliberately or accidentally, your prayer is invalid. If a wajib is missed deliberately, it's same as the fard element. Prayer is invalid, must be repeated. However, if a wajib is missed accidentally, prayer is unsound and must be corrected. How do you correct a prayer? Through sajda saw. One sajda saw is enough. So if you've made about 4 errors in the wajib throughout the prayer, you don't have to do 4 sajda saw. You only do the 1 sajda saw. Okay? You know what? There's a lot to get through on the sunnahs. Okay, let's just quickly talk through the sunnahs. The following are the most important ones. There's many sunnahs, but these are following raising the hands. Make note of this. And then this is why I said that you can pray in a car. Okay, so let's take first on raising the hands in takbir. The way your best way of doing it is you raise your hand is like this, fingers slightly apart, not stretched apart, slightly apart, like this, facing towards the qibla. And it's good to your thumbs touch the your earlobes here, yeah. Okay.
What about like this?
Ladies it's short. Everything on the lady motion is short. So I think then you normally you do it under your the hijab or whatever, you know, scarf you got on. So you keep a short movement on there. Okay. Standing right over left. But again, you can still do this. You know, my fingers apart and a lot. It just means that you don't have to raise it up to your ears. Just keep it short. And then ladies, obviously, they don't keep the. Ladies don't keep the hands by the navel, it's on the chest. Okay. Remember what I said in the, you know, you said that a person driving in the traffic, how can they pray? Raising your hands for takbir is what? A sunnah. So, what is the wajib element in the takbir? What's the integral or the wajib element in the takbir? Say, but don't be shy. Look, none of them answering why you. It's not. It shouldn't stop you. Saying Allahu Akbar. So you got your hand on the steering wheel. What do you have to do? You got your hand on the steering wheel. All you need to say is Allahu Akbar. You don't have to raise your hands because it's sunnah. Okay. Having your hands close onto on your just below your navel or on your chest is again what? Sunnah. So your hands can stay on the steering wheel, no problem whatsoever. I mentioned earlier on what's a ruku. So if you're seated, if you've hurt yourself, you're seated and you're playing seated. How do you do a ruku? That's it. How do you do a sajda? Just go slightly forward. That's it. Your eyes can still be ahead. You understand? So is that understood? Does that answer your question now? How you can pray? I don't recommend it, but I'm just giving you a solution on it. Go on. You don't have to turn your head for Islam. Turning your head is sunnah. Turning your head is sunnah. Go on. We just got the same question. Yeah, go on.
No, you know how you say when we're in the mud, you have to concentrate. Our that focus has to be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then how do you concentrate if you're reading on
It's a nafil prayer basically. It's something good. You're going to concentrate as much as you can, kind of thing. Yeah. All I said was that it's possible to do. I'm not recommending you to do. I'd rather you come home and stay up all night and pray then, rather than praying in the car. But I'm giving you options here to make life easy for yourself. And that there's options stay within this room, or anyone that's watching online. I'm not going to recommend it to anyone else. Otherwise, I'm going to have people with the chappals coming after me. Yeah, that's why I said only for prayers, or only non-fard prayers. Okay. I see those are your. It's prayer time now anyway. So quickly going through the Tawud and Bismillah, saying Ameen. So you only need to say A'udhu Billah in the first rakat. You don't have to say it in the rest of the rakats. Yeah. Making the takbeers. So remember, if you're praying behind the Imam, you don't recite. But anything apart from that recitation, you have to say. So when you're saying the takbir, when you say Sami Allahu liman hamda Rabbana lakam, all the rest of it, you say it. One final point actually before we break up, and people make this mistake a lot, is that in the tashahhud, praying behind an Imam, if you're reading at-tahiyyat, if the Imam does the salam before you finish at-tahiyyat, you have to complete it. You have to complete at-tahiyyat. However, if the Imam does a salam and you're reading Durood Sharif or a dua, you don't have to complete that. So you have to follow the Imam and you do the salam. The only time is you complete it is at-tahiyyat. Anything after that, so you don't have to think about Imam doing the salam and I'm still on Durood Sharif. Then I have to read my Durood Sharif, then I got to read a dua, and then I'll do quickly salam. No. As soon as the Imam does it, after at-tahiyyat, as soon as the Imam does the salam, you follow it. Okay, that's just the point I wanted to mention there. It's there anyway. The sunnahs are there within the notes, so read them through. What we'll turn on doing next week, inshallah, I'll quickly go over it briefly, and hopefully we'll go through some other of the prayer as well. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam Muhammad wa barik wa sallim wa salli alayhi subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallah khair.